Welcome to the English Pod community. In today's episode, we'll be practicing English listening and writing skills by diving into some real-life stories. These stories will not only improve your listening, but also help you learn new vocabulary and sentence structures. Whether you're commuting or relaxing at home, you can listen and absorb the language naturally. So, if you enjoy this episode, don't forget to press the like button. It helps us bring more content like this to you. Now let me share a story about my friend Sam. Sam had always been a quiet person and didn't really enjoy talking much in social situations. One day, he had to go on a work trip to another city, and he found himself in a room full of strangers. At first, he was nervous and unsure about how to interact with people. But then, something interesting happened. He realized that he didn't have to speak perfectly. All he needed to do was be natural, ask simple questions, and listen carefully to others. Sam started talking to a colleague named Emily, who was really friendly and explained how she had worked with international clients for years. Emily shared a story about a challenging project, and Sam was amazed at how much he could learn by just paying attention. What did Sam learn from this experience? He realized that the more you listen, the better you get at speaking. Not just in terms of vocabulary, but also in understanding how conversations flow. It's something we all can apply in our own daily interactions. Just imagine, by listening more, you'll notice how people use phrases and words in a natural, casual way, which is perfect for writing too. Let me tell you another example. I remember my trip to Paris. I was with my husband, Mark, and we were trying to find our way through a crowded market. We needed to ask for directions. As we approached a local vendor, I nervously said, "Excuse me, could you tell me how to get to the Eiffel Tower?" The vendor smiled and pointed us in the right direction. He didn't speak perfect English, but he used simple, clear phrases that I could understand easily. Listening to him carefully not only helped us find our way, but also taught me some useful, travel-related vocabulary that I've used again since then. So, how can you improve your English by listening to stories like these? Well, it's simple. The more you listen to different situations, whether they're about travel, work, or daily life, the more you'll pick up. Each story teaches you something new, and with each new word or phrase you hear, you'll get closer to sounding more natural in your own conversations. All right, let's continue with another story. This time, I want to share a story about my friend Jake, who lives in New York. Jake works in a busy office downtown, and his job involves a lot of meetings and presentations. A few months ago, he was given the task of presenting a new project idea to a group of important clients. At first, he was nervous because this was his first big presentation, and he didn't want to make any mistakes. The night before the meeting, Jake called me and asked for some advice. He said, "Natasha, I don't know if I can do this. What if they don't understand me?" I told him that the key was to be clear and confident in his delivery. I reminded him that no one expects him to be perfect. As long as he communicated his ideas clearly and with confidence, he would do great. The next day, Jake stood in front of the clients and began his presentation. At first, he felt a little nervous, but as he went on, he realized that the more he focused on what he was saying, the easier it became to express his thoughts. He used simple language and made sure to explain his ideas step by step. After the presentation, one of the clients named Sarah complimented Jake. She said, "I really appreciated how clearly you explained everything. It made it easy for us to understand your ideas." Jake learned something important that day. He learned that speaking English in a professional setting doesn't require fancy vocabulary or complex sentences. What matters most is being clear, direct, and confident. It's all about getting your message across in a way that others can understand, and listening to feedback from your audience is. So, how can this story help you with your English listening and writing skills? Well, when you listen to stories like Jake's, you learn how to handle different situations, like giving presentations or talking to clients. You pick up new phrases and expressions that are used in everyday professional life, and you can use these in your own conversations or writing. Now, let's move on to another example from my own experience. A few years ago, I visited my uncle in Chicago. He's an entrepreneur, and he runs his own small business. One afternoon, we went to a local cafe, and while we were there, he bumped into one of his old friends named David, who owns a restaurant in the city. They started talking about their businesses and how things were going. David shared a story about how he had to quickly adapt his restaurant's menu when a new competitor opened nearby. He explained how he listened carefully to what his customers wanted, and based on their feedback, he made changes that helped his business grow. Listening to David's story made me realize how important it is to pay attention to people's needs and make decisions based on what you hear. Whether you're running a business or simply having a conversation with a friend, being a good listener helps you understand the situation better and come up with the right response. By listening to real-life situations like this, you're not just improving your ability to understand spoken English, but you're also learning how to write about different scenarios. For example, if you were to write about a business situation like David's, you could use simple but effective phrases to describe challenges, solutions, and the results of decisions. This practice helps you become more confident in both your speaking and writing skills. These stories show us that improving English isn't just about learning new words. It's about understanding how to use those words in real-life situations. The more you listen to stories like these, the more you'll develop a natural sense of how English works in different contexts. Whether you're at work, meeting new people, or just having a casual conversation, listening to real-life stories helps you understand the language on a deeper level. Let's continue, and this time, I want to share a longer story that will give you even more practice with English listening and writing skills. I'm going to tell you about my friend Mike, who lives in Los Angeles. Mike works as a project manager at a technology company, and his job involves a lot of communication with clients, team members, and other companies. A few months ago, Mike was in charge of organizing a major presentation for a potential new client. This new client was a huge company, and they were considering partnering with Mike's company for a big project. Mike was excited about the opportunity, but also nervous. He had never worked with such a large client before, and he wanted to make a good impression. He was preparing for weeks, making sure the presentation would be perfect. He spent hours putting together slides, researching the client's needs, and rehearsing what he would say. He even asked his colleague, Sarah, to help him practice. The night before the big presentation, Mike called me. He said, "Natasha, I don't know if I'm ready. What if I forget what I'm supposed to say? What if they don't like our ideas?" I could hear the anxiety in his voice, so I gave him some advice. I told him, "Mike, it's okay to be nervous. But remember, the most important thing is to stay calm, listen carefully to the client's questions, and be confident in your answers. You don't have to say everything perfectly, just make sure you communicate clearly and focus on what matters most." The next day, Mike went to the meeting. He was still nervous, but he tried to stay focused on the task at hand. As he started presenting, he could feel his nerves melting away. He began to speak clearly and confidently, explaining the project plan in simple but effective language. During the meeting, the client, a man named John, asked several questions. Mike listened carefully to each question and answered them in a clear and professional way. He didn't try to impress the client with complicated language or technical jargon. Instead, he focused on making his points in a straightforward, easy-to-understand manner. At the end of the meeting, John told Mike, I appreciate how clear you were in your explanations. It's not just about the details, it's about how well we understand each other. Mike felt relieved, and later, he told me how much he had learned from the experience. He realized that listening to the client's questions and responding with clear answers was the key to building trust and understanding. By not overcomplicating things and focusing on clear communication, he was able to create a good impression and, in the end, secure the deal. This story teaches us an important lesson about the power of listening and clear communication. Mike didn't rely on fancy words or complicated sentences. He focused on understanding the client's needs and responding in a way that made sense. Listening carefully to what others say, especially in business situations, is one of the most important skills you can develop in English. Now, I want to share another story from my own life. A few years ago, I visited my cousin Jessica in Miami. Jessica works as a marketing director for a small company, and she's always busy planning events and meetings. One day, she invited me to join her at a networking event for local businesses. At first, I wasn't sure what to expect, but Jessica explained to me that networking events are all about meeting new people and forming connections. She said, "Natasha, if you want to get ahead in business, you need to be able to talk to anyone and make a good impression quickly. It's all about listening to what others are saying and responding in a way that shows you're interested in their ideas." When we arrived at the event, Jessica introduced me to a woman named Olivia, who owns a small bakery in the area. Olivia started talking about the challenges she faced in running her bakery, especially with the competition from larger chains. As Olivia spoke, Jessica was actively listening, nodding, and asking thoughtful questions. Olivia appreciated Jessica's interest and started sharing more details about her business. At one point, Olivia said, "If I could just figure out how to reach more customers online, I know my business would grow." Jessica listened carefully and then offered some advice. She said, "Have you tried using social media more effectively? I've worked with businesses before that saw a big boost in customers just by being more active online." That conversation stuck with me because it showed how effective listening can lead to great opportunities. By paying attention to what Olivia was saying, Jessica was able to offer valuable advice that could help her business grow. This is a perfect example of how listening and responding with thoughtful suggestions can strengthen relationships and lead to new opportunities. And of course, this is something you can apply in your own conversations as well, whether in a business setting or in daily life. Now let's talk about how these stories can help you with your English. In both stories, Mike and Jessica had to listen carefully to others and respond in a way that made sense. By practicing your listening skills, you'll start to notice how native speakers use phrases and expressions in different situations. For example, when you're at a business meeting, you'll hear phrases like, "Could you clarify that?" or "What's your take on this?" These are useful phrases you can use when you find yourself in similar situations. Listening to conversations. Like these will also help you understand the natural flow of a discussion. You'll learn how people transition from one idea to another, how they ask questions, and how they respond in a friendly, professional way. All of this will improve your writing as well, because you'll be able to use the same language patterns in your own writing. When you write emails, reports, or even social media posts, you'll have a better sense of how to structure your sentences and use words that sound natural. One of the best ways to improve your listening and writing skills is by exposing yourself to real-life situations like these. The more you listen to stories about work, business, and everyday life, the more you'll learn how to communicate effectively in English. And the more you practice, the more confident you'll become in your ability to speak and write in a way that sounds natural and fluent. Let me continue with another long story that will give you more practice. I want to tell you about my friend Robert, who lives in Dallas, Texas. Robert works as a financial analyst for a large corporation, and his job requires him to work with numbers, budgets, and reports every day. But despite being really good with numbers, Robert had never been very confident when it came to speaking in front of a group or presenting his ideas. A few months ago, Robert's company asked him to present an important financial report to the executive team. The report contained detailed financial projections and analysis of the company's performance over the past year. Robert was nervous about the task because he had always been more comfortable working with spreadsheets than talking to people, especially executives who were much more experienced than him. He had never given a presentation in front of such an important audience, and he wasn't sure if he could explain the numbers clearly enough. Robert called me for advice, and he was worried about whether his English was good enough to explain all the financial details. I told him that one of the most important things to do in a presentation is to keep it simple. You don't have to use complex language or try to impress people with big words. Instead, you need to focus on making the key points easy to understand. So, I suggested that he practice explaining his ideas in simpler terms, breaking down the numbers and focusing on what they meant rather than just showing lots of data. I also told him that it would be a good idea to practice in front of a friend or colleague to make sure he felt confident. The night before his big presentation, Robert was still feeling nervous. He practiced his presentation several times, going through each slide and making sure he could explain every detail. He even wrote down some key phrases he could use if he got stuck. He spent hours rehearsing, but he still wasn't sure if he would be able to handle the pressure the next day. The day of the presentation arrived, and Robert was extremely nervous as he walked into the conference room. He was ready to speak, but his heart was racing and his hands were shaking. But as soon as he began talking, something amazing happened. He realized that he didn't have to memorize every word or be perfect. All he had to do was stay calm and explain the key points clearly. He used simple language to explain the numbers, and he made sure to pause and ask if anyone had questions. Slowly, his nervousness started to fade. Robert's clear explanations and simple language helped the executive team understand the report, and in the end, they were impressed with his work. After the presentation, Robert was relieved, and he shared his experience with me. He told me, "Natasha, I didn't realize how important it was to speak in a way that everyone could understand. I always thought I needed to use complicated terms, but keeping it simple actually worked better. I feel so much more confident now." Robert's story shows us that when you focus on clear communication and understanding your audience, you can overcome your fears and speak confidently, even in challenging situations. Now let's talk about how this story can help you with your English. First of all, Robert's story shows the importance of simplifying your language, especially when you're presenting information to a group of people. In English, there are many ways to explain complex ideas, and using simpler phrases and words often makes things clearer. For example, instead of saying, "In light of the recent economic downturn, our financial forecast indicates a significant decrease in profit margins," Robert might say, "Our company is making less money because of the recent economic situation, and our profit is expected to drop." Both sentences explain the same thing, but the second one is much easier for everyone to understand. By practicing your listening skills with stories like Robert's, you'll get used to hearing how people explain complex ideas in simple, straightforward ways. You'll hear how they break down difficult concepts and make them more accessible to their audience. These are the kinds of skills that will help you in your own conversations and presentations. You'll also become more comfortable with the types of phrases people use in business situations, such as, "Let me break it down for you," "to put it simply," or "what this means is." These are all useful expressions to learn because they can help you explain your ideas more clearly. Now, let's move on to another story that will help you improve your listening and writing skills. This one is about my friend Alex, who works as a lawyer in Washington, D.C. Alex specializes in corporate law, which means he spends a lot of time advising companies on legal matters. One day, Alex was working on a case for a large client who was dealing with a complicated legal issue. The client was under a lot of pressure and needed Alex's help to resolve the situation as quickly as possible. Alex told me that one of the challenges he faced with this client was that the client didn't always understand the legal terms that Alex was using. As a lawyer, Alex was used to using legal jargon and technical language, but he realized that this wasn't helping his client. So Alex decided to change his approach. Instead of explaining things in a way that was full of legal terminology, he started using simpler words and examples that his client could relate to. For example, instead of saying breach of contract or liability, Alex explained the situation by saying, "You didn't keep your promise, and now the other company is saying you owe them money because of it." At first, the client was a little confused, but as Alex continued to explain things in simpler terms, the client began to understand the situation much better. Alex also made sure to give examples that were easy for the client to relate to, based on everyday situations. By the end of the meeting, the client thanked Alex for explaining things in a way that was easy to understand. The client said, "I feel much more confident now that I understand the situation. You've made things much clearer for me." This story shows that, just like in Robert's case, it's important to make sure your audience understands what you're saying. In business or any other setting, you can't assume that people will understand complex language, especially if they're not familiar with the topic. Using simple words and giving examples can help bridge that gap and make sure everyone is on the same page. By listening to stories like Alex's, you'll learn how to take complicated information and explain it in a way that anyone can understand. These kinds of lessons are valuable for improving both your listening and writing skills. When you listen to stories where people explain things clearly, you learn how to use simple and direct language in your own conversations and writing. This skill will help you in business meetings, presentations, or even when you're explaining something to a friend or family member. Let me continue with another story that will give you more insight into real-life situations. This time, I want to share a story about my friend Sam, who lives in Chicago, Illinois. Sam works as a project manager at a tech startup, and his job involves overseeing different projects, managing teams, and making sure deadlines are met. One of Sam's responsibilities is to ensure that all the different parts of a project come together smoothly and on time. He enjoys his job, but has faced challenges with team members who sometimes don't communicate clearly. A few months ago, Sam was working on a big project for a new app that his company was developing. The project involved different teams: designers, programmers, marketers, and customer support. Each team had different tasks, and they needed to collaborate closely to make sure everything was done on time. However, Sam noticed that there was often confusion because team members weren't communicating their ideas and progress effectively. Some people were sending long emails with too many details, while others were giving short updates that didn't provide enough information. As a result, Sam had to spend a lot of time making sure everyone was on the same page. Sam realized that he needed to improve communication within the teams to make the project go smoothly. He decided to hold weekly meetings where each team could give a short update on their progress. He also set up a simple system where everyone would use one tool to track their tasks and deadlines. This way, all the teams could see what others were working on and how the project was progressing. At first, some team members were skeptical about the changes. They weren't sure if the new system would work, but over time, as the project progressed, they saw the benefits. The weekly meetings helped everyone stay on track, and the tool allowed them to keep all the information in one place. Communication became clearer, and people started working more efficiently. The project ended up being completed on time, and the app was launched successfully. Sam was proud of the work his team had done. and he learned an important lesson about the power of clear communication. Sam's story is a great example of how communication can make or break a project. It also shows how making small changes in how you communicate can lead to big improvements. By simplifying things and making sure everyone is on the same page, you can avoid confusion and work more effectively. This story is helpful for improving your listening skills because it shows how people in a professional environment communicate with each other. Sam's story also teaches you how to give and receive clear updates, which is something you can practice in your own life. Now, let's look at another example from my friend Jessica, who lives in Los Angeles, California. Jessica works as a marketing manager for a well-known clothing brand. Her job involves working with her team to develop advertising campaigns and create strategies to reach their target audience. Recently, Jessica was given the task of launching a new product line for the company, which was a big responsibility. This new product was a collaboration with a famous influencer, and the company was expecting it to be a huge success. However, Jessica quickly realized that coordinating a campaign for a high-profile collaboration was more complicated than she had anticipated. To start, Jessica needed to make sure that all the different parts of the campaign were aligned. She worked with the creative team to design advertisements, the social media team to create posts and videos, and the sales team to make sure they were ready to promote the new product in stores. Each team had its own tasks, and Jessica needed to make sure that everything was completed on time and to the right standards. As Jessica worked on the campaign, she encountered some challenges. One of the issues was that different teams had different ideas about how the campaign should look. The creative team wanted to focus on bright, bold visuals, while the social media team preferred a more subtle, minimalist approach. The sales team, on the other hand, wanted to use traditional marketing strategies that focused on discounts and special promotions. At first, Jessica felt overwhelmed. How could she bring all these different ideas together and make sure everyone was happy? After thinking about it, Jessica realized that she needed to have a meeting with all the teams to discuss their ideas and find a way to bring them together. She also realized that she needed to communicate clearly about the goals of the campaign and why certain decisions were being made. Instead of trying to please everyone, she focused on finding the best approach that would work for the brand and for the product. Jessica's meeting with the teams went really well. She listened to everyone's concerns and suggestions, but she also made it clear that the campaign needed to stay true to the brand's identity. After some discussion, they all agreed on a strategy that combined the best ideas from each team. The campaign was launched, and it ended up being a huge success. The new product line sold out in record time, and the company received a lot of positive feedback from customers. This story about Jessica is a great example of how effective communication can help resolve conflicts and bring people together. It shows that when there are different opinions, it's important to listen to everyone, but also to stay focused on the overall goal. Jessica used her communication skills to guide the team and make sure that everyone was working toward the same objective. For you, listening to stories like Jessica's will help you understand how people communicate in the workplace and how they solve problems through collaboration. Just like Sam and Jessica, you will encounter situations in your own life where clear communication is key. Whether it's in school, work, or even with friends and family, being able to express yourself clearly and listen to others is essential. This is why practicing your listening skills with real-life stories is so valuable. As you listen to these examples, you can pick up on the language people use in different situations and start to use it in your own conversations. Now, I want to share one more story with you, this time from my friend Michael, who lives in New York City. Michael works as a software engineer, and he's part of a team that develops mobile applications. One of Michael's projects was to create an app that would help people track their daily activities and set personal goals. It was a an exciting project, but Michael faced many challenges along the way. The biggest challenge Michael faced was making sure that the app was easy to use. The team had designed a lot of features for the app, but they quickly realized that it was becoming too complicated. Users were getting confused by all the options, and many people were abandoning the app after just a few minutes of use. Michael knew that the app needed to be simple and intuitive if it was going to be successful, but he wasn't sure how to make the change. All right, let's continue with another engaging story. This one comes from a good friend of mine named David, who works as a real estate agent in Miami, Florida. David helps people buy and sell homes, and his job is a mix of customer service, problem solving, and understanding market trends. Recently, David had to help a couple named John and Maria find their dream home. They had specific needs. They wanted a house with a large backyard for their children, close to good schools, and not too far from the beach. They also had a budget they didn't want to exceed, which made finding the right house a little more challenging. David started by asking them questions about their preferences and making sure he understood exactly what they wanted. After gathering all the details, he began searching for homes that fit their criteria. He showed them several houses, but none of them were quite right. Some were too far from the beach, while others were too small. John and Maria started to get discouraged, and David could tell they were getting frustrated. He knew he had to communicate more effectively and manage their expectations. Instead of continuing to show them houses that didn't quite fit, David decided to have a more open conversation with them. He sat down with John and Maria and explained that finding the perfect home could take some time. He reassured them that he was committed to helping them find exactly what they wanted, but that it might take a little patience. He also let them know that the market in Miami was competitive, and they might have to adjust their expectations slightly if they wanted to find something within their budget. David also asked them to think about what was absolutely non-negotiable in their search. For example, if they absolutely needed to be close to the beach, they might have to look at smaller homes or ones that were a bit farther from other amenities. After this conversation, John and Maria felt much more relaxed. They appreciated that David was honest with them and that he cared about helping them find the right home, not just any home. A few weeks later, David found a house that was just right. It had the large backyard they wanted, it was close to good schools, and while it wasn't right next to the beach, it was only a short drive away. John and Maria were thrilled, and they quickly made an offer. The deal went through smoothly, and the family moved into their new home. This story teaches us an important lesson about managing expectations and communicating effectively, especially when things don't go as planned. In David's case, the way he communicated with John and Maria helped reduce their frustration and allowed them to make a decision they were happy with. This is a great example of how listening and clear communication can lead to positive outcomes, whether you're in a professional setting or dealing with personal situations. Now let's move on to another example, this time from my friend Amy, who works as a nurse in a busy hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. Amy has been a nurse for over 10 years, and she works in the emergency department, where things can get very intense. A few weeks ago, Amy was working a shift when a patient came in with severe chest pain. The patient, Mr. Thompson, was in his 60s and had a history of heart disease. Amy quickly assessed his symptoms and called for the doctor to come in and examine him. While waiting for the doctor, Amy stayed by Mr. Thompson's side and reassured him. He was anxious and kept asking questions about what was happening. Amy knew that the more she could explain the situation to him, the more at ease he would feel. She told him that they were going to run some tests to figure out what was causing his chest pain and that the doctor would be in shortly to explain everything. She also explained that it was important for him to stay calm so they could help him better. As the doctor arrived and began his examination, Amy continued to communicate with Mr. Thompson, explaining what the doctor was doing and why it was important. She also kept him informed about the next steps in his treatment. After a few hours of testing and observation, it turned out that Mr. Thompson had suffered a mild heart attack, but thankfully he was going to be okay with the right treatment. Let's dive deeper into how clear communication can improve everyday situations. This next story is about my friend Lucas, who works as a project manager in San Francisco, California. Lucas is responsible for overseeing different projects, making sure that everything runs smoothly and that deadlines are met. One of his most recent projects involved building a new office complex in the city. The project had a tight deadline and a large budget, so it was crucial for Lucas to communicate well with everyone involved, from the construction team to the architects and city officials. At the beginning of the project, Lucas noticed that the construction workers and architects had very different ideas about how things should be done. The construction workers were focused on getting things done quickly, while the architects were concerned with the aesthetics and design details. The tension between the two groups started to cause delays, and Lucas knew he had to step in and mediate. Instead of just telling the two groups what to do, Lucas decided to have a meeting where everyone could openly express their concerns. He started by giving everyone a chance to explain their perspective. The architects explained that they wanted to ensure the design was up to standard, while the construction workers argued that certain design choices were slowing them down. Lucas made sure everyone listened carefully to each other's point of view before he spoke. After hearing everyone out, Lucas came up with a plan that addressed both sides. He suggested that the construction team work in parallel with the architects to make sure both the design and timeline were respected. This way, there wouldn't be any bottlenecks, and both groups could work more efficiently. Lucas also made sure to check in with everyone regularly to ensure that things were going according to plan. By fostering an open and respectful environment for communication, Lucas was able to turn what seemed like a frustrating situation into a productive one. The project was completed on time, and both the construction team and the architects were happy with the result. This story highlights the importance of listening and communicating in a way that allows everyone to share their thoughts and concerns. It also shows how effective communication can prevent misunderstandings and keep projects moving forward smoothly. Let's look at another example, this time from a different field. Maria is a teacher in Chicago, Illinois, and she teaches high school biology. Maria's classroom is full of diverse students, each with different backgrounds and learning styles. Some students are very shy and rarely speak up, while others are more outgoing and willing to participate in class discussions. At the beginning of the semester, Maria noticed that a few students were struggling to keep up with the lessons. One of them, a student named Ethan, had difficulty understanding some of the concepts because English was his second language. Instead of just giving Ethan extra work or assignments, Maria decided to take a different approach. She realized that Ethan might benefit from visual aids and hands-on activities that could help him better understand the material. She started using diagrams, videos, and even real-life examples to explain difficult concepts. Maria also encouraged Ethan to ask questions and made sure he felt comfortable in class. Over time, Ethan's confidence grew, and he began participating more in class. He started asking insightful questions and was able to explain some of the concepts to his classmates in simpler terms. Maria's patience and clear communication not only helped Ethan improve, but also created an environment where all students felt comfortable asking for help when they needed it. This story illustrates the importance of adjusting communication methods to meet the needs of others. It shows that being flexible and creative in how we communicate can help us connect with people who might be struggling to understand something. Whether you're teaching, mentoring, or simply helping a friend, using different approaches to communicate can make a big difference. Another great example of communication comes from a friend of mine named James, who works as a chef in New Orleans, Louisiana. James runs a popular restaurant known for its delicious Southern dishes. One day, James had to handle a situation when a customer sent back their meal, claiming that the dish wasn't cooked properly. The customer, a woman named Sarah, was upset and insisted that her food was undercooked. James knew that the best way to resolve this issue was through clear, respectful communication. Amy's story shows the power of clear communication in high-pressure situations. She was able to explain complex medical information in a way that was easy for Mr. Thompson to understand, which helped reduce his anxiety. It also shows the importance of staying calm and communicating effectively when things are stressful. For language learners, this story is valuable because it highlights how clear communication in emergencies can make a huge difference. Another great example comes from my friend Tom, who works as a teacher in New York City. Tom teaches high school history, and one of his classes recently had a debate on the topic of immigration. The students were split on their opinions, and the debate got a little heated. Tom could see that some students were starting to argue, instead of having a constructive conversation, so he decided to step in and guide the discussion. Instead of shutting down the debate, Tom encouraged the students to listen to each other's perspectives. He reminded them that everyone had different experiences and that it was important to respect each other's opinions, even if they didn't agree. Tom also made sure that everyone had a chance to speak and that the conversation stayed respectful. As a result, the debate became much more productive, and students started asking thoughtful questions and responding to each other's points instead of just arguing. Tom's approach is a great example of how a teacher can use communication to create a positive, respectful learning environment. He used his listening and speaking skills to guide the conversation and make sure it stayed on track. For learners of English, this is a great story to practice listening skills, as it shows how people can disagree on a topic but still have a respectful and productive conversation. Now, I want to share a story about my friend Mark, who works as a firefighter in Los Angeles, California. Mark's job is demanding and requires him to think quickly and communicate effectively during emergencies. One day, Mark and his team were called to a house fire in a residential neighborhood. The fire was spreading quickly, and there were reports that someone might still be inside the house. When Mark arrived at the scene, he immediately began giving orders to his team. He made sure everyone knew their role, and he also communicated with the paramedics and police officers who were on site. Mark knew that clear communication was essential to ensure everyone's safety. While firefighters worked to put out the fire, Mark went inside the house to search for the missing person. He called out to anyone who might be inside, and after a few minutes, he heard a faint voice coming from upstairs. Mark quickly found the person, who was an elderly woman trapped in her bedroom. He told her to stay calm and explained that they were going to get her out safely. He guided her through the smoke and out of the house, where paramedics were waiting to check her for injuries. Thankfully, the woman was okay, and she was able to thank Mark for saving her life. Mark's story is a powerful reminder of how communication can save lives. He was able to keep his team organized, stay calm under pressure, and clearly communicate with the person he was rescuing. For English learners, this story highlights the importance of using clear and simple language in emergencies, especially when trying to explain something important or reassure someone. These stories from Sam, Jessica, David, Amy, Tom, and Mark all demonstrate how effective communication is a vital skill in many different situations. Whether you're at work, dealing with a challenging project, or helping someone in an emergency, being able to listen, speak clearly, and explain things in an understandable way can make all the difference. As you continue to practice your English listening skills, think about how these stories relate to your own life. How do you communicate at work, with your family, or with friends? By listening to these examples, you can start to notice the ways in which people use language to solve problems, help others, and make decisions. The more you practice, the better you will become at understanding how English speakers use language in real-life situations. And as you become more confident in your listening skills, you'll also find it easier to express yourself clearly and communicate effectively in your own life. Keep practicing, stay curious, and keep learning. You're on the right path. Instead of getting defensive, James calmly approached Sarah's table. He apologized for the mistake and asked her to explain exactly what was wrong with the dish. Sarah explained that the chicken wasn't cooked through, and James listened carefully, without interrupting her. He then explained that he would personally take care of the issue and make sure that the meal was prepared properly. After talking with Sarah, James went back to the kitchen and made sure the chicken was cooked to perfection. He also decided to offer Sarah a complimentary dessert as a gesture of goodwill. When he brought her the new dish, he made sure to explain the steps he had taken to ensure it was cooked properly. Sarah was pleased with how James handled the situation and thanked him for his professionalism. James's story shows how communication, especially in a customer service setting, can turn a potentially negative situation into a positive one. By staying calm and listening to the customer's concerns, James was able to resolve the issue and ensure that the customer left the restaurant happy. This is a great lesson in how effective communication can improve customer satisfaction and build trust. Now, I want to share a story from my friend Rachel, who works as a software engineer in Austin, Texas. Rachel is part of a team that develops mobile apps for a tech company. Recently, her team was working on a new app that would help people manage their finances. However, the project was running behind schedule, and the team was feeling the pressure to finish it on time. Rachel knew that the team needed to communicate better to meet the deadline, so she suggested having daily check-in meetings where everyone could update the group on their progress and discuss any challenges they were facing. At first, the team wasn't sure about the daily meetings, but Rachel explained that it would help everyone stay on track and address any problems early on. The meetings allowed team members to share their progress, ask for help, and collaborate more effectively. Rachel made sure to keep the meetings short and focused, so they didn't take up too much time. By the end of the week, the team had made significant progress, and the app was completed on time. This story shows how clear and consistent communication can help a team stay organized and motivated, especially when working on a tight deadline. It also highlights the importance of being proactive and addressing issues before they become bigger problems. For anyone working on a team project, Rachel's experience is a great example of how open communication can lead to success. Let's now hear about Sarah, a freelance graphic designer from Seattle, Washington. Sarah works with clients from all over the country, helping them create logos, websites, and branding materials. One day, Sarah received an email from a new client, Mike, who wanted her to design a logo for his new business. Sarah was excited about the project. But when she spoke with Mike on the phone to discuss the details, she realized that he didn't have a clear idea of what he wanted. Mike gave Sarah a general idea of his business and some colors he liked, but there were no specific details about what kind of logo he envisioned. Instead of starting the project without clear direction, Sarah decided to ask Mike more questions to get a better understanding of his vision. She asked him about the type of image he wanted the logo to convey, what kind of font he preferred, and what style would best represent his brand. After a lengthy conversation, Sarah finally understood what Mike was looking for. She also suggested that he take a look at some design samples to help narrow down his preferences. This way, she could create a logo that matched his vision. Mike was grateful for Sarah's patience and communication, and he was able to provide more specific feedback once he saw the design samples. Sarah's story teaches us the importance of asking the right questions and communicating clearly when working with others. By taking the time to understand Mike's needs, Sarah was able to create a logo that exceeded his expectations. This is a great lesson in how effective communication can lead to better results, whether you're working with a client, a colleague, or anyone else. As you can see, communication is an essential skill that can help you in many different areas of life. Whether you're working on a project, dealing with a difficult situation, or simply trying to connect with others, being able to communicate clearly and effectively can make all the difference. Keep practicing your English listening and speaking skills, and you'll find that your ability to communicate will improve in all areas of your life. Let's continue with a story that shows how good communication can help us deal with complex situations. This one is about Brian, a high school teacher from New York City, who teaches chemistry. Brian has been teaching for over 15 years and loves his job. However, this particular year, he faced a challenge he hadn't expected. He had a new student named Olivia, who had recently moved from another state. Olivia was very shy and didn't speak up much in class. She also had a hard time understanding the lessons at first because English wasn't her first language. This made things even more difficult for her, especially in a science subject that already felt challenging. Brian immediately recognized that Olivia needed extra help to adjust to the class. He could see she was struggling but didn't want to draw attention to her in front of the other students. So instead of calling her out in class, Brian decided to set up a one-on-one meeting with Olivia after school. When they met, Brian made sure to ask Olivia what she found difficult and how she felt about the class. Olivia explained that she had trouble understanding the scientific terms in English and was feeling overwhelmed with all the new vocabulary. Brian listened carefully, and then he asked her what would make it easier for her to learn. Olivia said that if the terms were explained in simpler words, she would feel more comfortable. Brian understood the importance of adapting his teaching style to fit Olivia's needs. So he started using simpler language in his lessons and even wrote key terms on the board with definitions in both English and her native language. Additionally, he provided her with extra study materials, such as videos and flashcards, which explained concepts in more detail. Over the following weeks, Olivia started to gain confidence. She wasn't afraid to ask questions in class anymore, and her grades improved. What really made a difference was Brian's willingness to adapt and communicate with Olivia in a way that made her feel comfortable. This story is a great example of how clear and thoughtful communication can help someone overcome obstacles, especially when they feel like they don't belong or understand what's going on. Whether you're a teacher, student, or just someone trying to understand something new, being patient and clear can make a huge difference. Let's now talk about Derek, a project manager in Los Angeles, California, who is leading a team in charge of building a new software platform for a major company. Derek's team consists of software developers, designers, and marketing experts. At first, everything seemed to be going well. They had weekly meetings to discuss progress, and the work was moving along at a steady pace. However, a few weeks into the project, Derek began to notice that there was some confusion among the team members. The developers seemed to be working in a different direction than the designers, and the marketing team had ideas that didn't align with the product's development. Derek realized that the reason for this confusion was a lack of clear communication. Each department had its own set of goals and priorities, but no one was taking the time to explain their needs and expectations to the rest of the team. Derek knew that if they didn't fix this issue, the project would likely fail, and they would miss their deadline. So he decided to organize a series of workshops where everyone could come together and discuss their roles, needs, and concerns. The first workshop focused on making sure each department understood the goals of the project. The developers explained the technical challenges they were facing. The designers discussed the importance of user experience, and the marketing team shared their vision for how the product should be presented to customers. By having these open conversations, the team was able to come up with a plan that satisfied everyone's needs. They set clear milestones and expectations for each group and agreed to have regular check-ins to ensure everyone was on the same page. After the workshops, communication between the departments greatly improved. The developers, designers, and marketers were able to work together more effectively, and the project was completed on time and within budget. Derek's story shows that when there's a breakdown in communication, the best thing to do is to address it head-on by bringing everyone together and making sure that everyone understands the bigger picture. In any team or work environment, open and transparent communication can make a huge difference in the success of the project. Now let's talk about how communication plays a big role in customer service. Jessica is the owner of a bakery in Miami, Florida, that specializes in custom cakes. One day, a customer named Thomas came in and ordered a cake for his wife's birthday. He wanted a cake that had a unique design, something that had never been done before. Jessica was excited about the challenge and asked Thomas to provide more details about what he wanted. However, Thomas was vague and didn't provide much information, which made it hard for Jessica to understand his exact expectations. Instead of just making assumptions and hoping the cake would turn out right, Jessica decided to ask more specific questions. She asked Thomas about the theme of the birthday party, the colors he wanted, and whether there was a specific shape or style of cake he had in mind. Thomas explained that his wife loved the ocean and wanted a cake that looked like a beach scene with a sunset. Jessica then asked if he had any preferences for flavors or cake textures, which he hadn't considered yet. After this conversation, Jessica had a much clearer idea of what Thomas wanted. She also made sure to give him some suggestions based on her experience, such as recommending a certain type of frosting that would hold up well in the hot weather. When Thomas came to pick up the cake on his wife's birthday, he was thrilled with the result. The cake not only looked beautiful but tasted delicious, and Thomas was so impressed that he even posted a photo of it on social media, which led to new customers finding out about Jessica's bakery. Jessica's story shows the importance of asking the right questions and clarifying expectations in customer service. By taking the time to listen to her customer and ask the right questions, she was able to deliver a product that exceeded Thomas's expectations. This is a great example of how good communication can help businesses succeed by ensuring that both the customer and the business are clear on what's being offered. Let's also talk about Ethan, a lawyer in Dallas, Texas. Ethan specializes in family law and often works with clients who are going through difficult divorces. One day, Ethan met with a new client named Maria, who was seeking advice about her divorce. Maria had a lot of questions, but she wasn't sure how to express her concerns clearly. She was feeling overwhelmed by the legal process and wasn't sure where to start. Ethan knew that his job was not just to give legal advice, but also to make sure that Maria felt heard and understood. Instead of overwhelming her with legal jargon, Ethan took the time to explain the divorce process step by step in simple terms. He also made sure to listen to her concerns and answer her questions in a way that made her feel comfortable. Ethan assured her that he would be with her every step of the way, guiding her through the process and ensuring that she understood her rights. By being patient and communicating clearly, Ethan helped Maria feel more confident about the process. She no longer felt lost or confused, and she appreciated that Ethan took the time to explain things in a way that was easy for her to understand. Maria's experience shows how important it is to communicate with empathy and clarity, especially when someone is going through a difficult time. Lastly, I want to share a story about Thomas, a financial advisor in Washington, D.C. Thomas helps people plan for retirement and manage their finances. One of his clients, Jane, had a lot of questions about her retirement plan and wasn't sure if she was making the right decisions. Thomas knew that it was important to explain her options clearly so that she could make an informed choice about her future. Instead of giving Jane a long list of financial terms and numbers, Thomas took a different approach. He started by asking Jane about her goals for retirement and what kind of lifestyle she hoped to have. Once he understood her priorities, he was able to explain her options in simple terms, focusing on the most important details. He also gave her examples of how each choice could impact her finances in the long run, so she could make a decision that made sense for her. Continuing with more stories where communication plays a key role, let's dive into a story about a construction project led by Greg, a project manager based in Chicago, Illinois. Greg is responsible for overseeing a large-scale construction site where a new office building is being built in the heart of downtown. The project has a strict deadline, and Greg has to ensure that everything is completed on time. However, one of the most important challenges he faces is making sure that all the workers, contractors, and suppliers are on the same page and communicating effectively. At first, Greg relied on emails and weekly meetings to stay updated on the project's progress. However, he quickly realized that this wasn't enough. There were miscommunications between the contractors and the suppliers, and some workers had trouble understanding the technical drawings. To solve this issue, Greg decided to introduce a daily morning meeting for the entire construction team. This was a chance for everyone to gather and discuss the tasks for the day. During these meetings, Greg would ask each team leader to give an update on their department's progress and discuss any challenges they were facing. The workers, contractors, and suppliers could ask questions, raise concerns, and clarify anything that was unclear. Greg made sure to keep the meetings brief but focused, ensuring that no one left without understanding the tasks for the day. Over time, these daily meetings became an essential part of the project's success. Everyone knew what was expected of them, and they had a clear plan for how to tackle the day's work. The miscommunication that had initially caused delays was reduced, and the project moved forward smoothly. Greg's decision to prioritize communication on the construction site made a big difference in meeting the project's deadline and achieving the desired quality of work. This story is an excellent example of how improving communication in the workplace can lead to better results. Whether you're managing a construction project or working in a different industry, ensuring that everyone understands their roles and expectations is critical to success. Let's move on to another story about Julie, a nurse from Boston, Massachusetts, who works at a busy hospital. Julie's job is to take care of patients in the emergency room, where she faces a fast-paced and stressful environment every day. One evening, Julie was assigned to take care of a patient named Sam, who had come in with a serious injury. Sam was in a lot of pain, and he was feeling anxious about his condition. He was also worried about the upcoming surgery he needed. Julie could see that Sam was scared, and she knew that it was important to communicate with him in a way that would help calm his nerves. Instead of just giving him instructions or focusing only on the medical side of things, Julie took the time to talk to him about his fears. She reassured him that he was in good hands and explained what the surgery would involve in simple, easy-to-understand language. Julie also made sure to answer all of Sam's questions and address his concerns, even if they seemed small or unimportant. Julie's communication skills made a huge difference. Sam felt much more at ease and was able to relax before the surgery. He knew exactly what to expect, and this helped reduce his anxiety. In the days following the surgery, Sam thanked Julie for her kindness and clear explanations. He felt that she had really listened to him and taken the time to ensure he was comfortable throughout the whole process. Julie's story highlights how effective communication in healthcare can make a patient feel more confident and less stressed during a difficult time. It shows that by using clear, empathetic communication, healthcare professionals can help patients feel more in control of their situation. Let's also discuss the story of John, a car salesman from Houston, Texas. John works at a car dealership and helps customers find the right vehicle for their needs. One day, a couple, Tom and Linda, came into the dealership looking for a family car. They had 2 young children and wanted something safe, spacious, and fuel-efficient. John listened carefully to their requirements and immediately started showing them a few models that matched their needs. However, Tom and Linda were unsure about which car was best for them. They had a lot of questions about the safety features, fuel economy. Instead of rushing through the sales pitch, John took the time to answer all their questions in detail. He didn't just give them the standard sales speech. He made sure to explain the features of each car in a way that was clear and relevant to their needs. John also pointed out the safety ratings and explained how each vehicle performed in real-world driving conditions. By the end of the visit, Tom and Linda were confident in their decision and chose a car that suited their family perfectly. What's interesting about John's story is how he used communication to build trust with his customers. By taking the time to answer their questions and avoid using technical jargon, John made Tom and Linda feel valued and informed. This story demonstrates how important it is to communicate with customers in a way that helps them make decisions without feeling pressured. Now, let's talk about a story from Sarah, a human resources manager from Atlanta, Georgia, who works for a large tech company. Sarah's job is to hire new employees and ensure that the company's staff is happy and productive. One day, Sarah had to conduct an interview for a senior management position. The candidate, Robert, had a lot of experience and seemed like a good fit for the role. However, during the interview, Sarah noticed that Robert was giving very short answers to her questions and wasn't opening up about his motivations or goals. Instead of continuing with the interview as usual, Sarah decided to change her approach. She asked Robert about his past experiences in more open-ended ways, encouraging him to tell stories about how he had handled challenges in the workplace. Sarah also asked him what his long-term career goals were and how he thought the company could help him achieve them. Slowly, Robert started to open up, and the interview became more of a conversation than a formal question-and-answer session. By the end of the interview, Sarah had a much clearer picture of Robert's strengths, goals, and potential fit for the company. She appreciated the way Robert had shared his personal story, which helped her understand his motivations. Sarah's story shows that adjusting your communication style based on the situation can lead to more productive conversations and better results. In this case, Sarah's ability to listen and ask the right questions helped her gain valuable insights into Robert's personality and potential as an employee. Finally, let's talk about the story of Henry, a small business owner from Phoenix, Arizona. Henry owns a local bakery that specializes in handmade bread and pastries. Over the years, Henry had built a loyal customer base, but lately he had noticed a decrease in sales. He wasn't sure what was causing the decline, so he decided to reach out to his customers for feedback. Henry sent out a survey to his regular customers, asking them what they liked about the bakery and what they thought could be improved. After reviewing the responses, Henry learned that many customers felt that the bakery's hours were too limited and that they had trouble finding parking nearby. Henry decided to take action by extending the bakery's hours and working with a local parking authority to arrange more parking spots for his customers. He also started offering delivery services for people who couldn't visit the bakery in person. These changes helped increase sales, and Henry's customers were grateful for the improvements. What made this story special is that Henry listened to his customers and took their feedback seriously. His willingness to communicate with them directly and make changes based on their suggestions not only improved his business, but also strengthened his relationship with his customers. In all these stories, we see how communication plays an essential role in achieving success in various aspects of life, whether it's in the workplace, healthcare, sales, or customer service. Being clear, empathetic, and willing to listen to others can lead to better relationships, greater understanding, and improved outcomes in every situation. By practicing active listening and adapting your communication style to fit different situations, you can build stronger connections and solve problems more effectively. Keep listening, keep practicing, and you'll find that your ability to communicate in English will improve every day. Let's dive into more stories of how communication and English skills can play a big role in real-life situations. This time, we'll explore a variety of professions and situations, showing how effective communication can make a difference in both personal and professional life. First, let's look at a story involving Michael, an experienced chef from New York City. Michael has worked in some of the best restaurants in the city and recently decided to open his own small Italian restaurant in the Brooklyn area. Despite his expertise in the kitchen, Michael found that running his own business presented a new set of challenges, especially when it came to managing a team. He had a great group of cooks and waitstaff, but he quickly realized that clear communication was essential for a smooth operation. One day, during a busy dinner shift, a mistake was made with an order. A customer who had asked for a vegetarian meal received a dish with meat in it. Michael knew that the key to resolving this issue was communication. Rather than getting upset or blaming his team, he calmly approached the waitstaff and kitchen crew to figure out where the mistake had happened. He gathered everyone for a quick meeting to go over the details, explaining how mistakes could be avoided in the future. Instead of focusing on blame, he emphasized the importance of being clear when communicating customer orders and checking each step for accuracy. What stood out about Michael's approach was how he handled the situation with patience and clarity. He made sure to communicate his expectations to his team and also listened to their feedback. As a result, the team understood the importance of double-checking orders, and there were fewer mistakes in the following weeks. Michael's story highlights how strong communication can help prevent mistakes and maintain a positive, productive atmosphere in the workplace. It's a perfect example of how communicating clearly and effectively can solve problems and keep things running smoothly. Next, let's talk about Clara, a marketing manager based in Los Angeles. Clara works for a tech company that is about to launch a new product aimed at making online shopping easier. Clara's role is to oversee the advertising campaign, and it's a big responsibility. The company has a tight deadline to meet, and there is a lot at stake. Her team consists of creative designers, content writers, and digital marketing specialists, and they all need to work together to make sure the product gets the attention it deserves. One day, Clara called a team meeting to go over the campaign strategy. She noticed that the team was somewhat disorganized, and there was confusion about who was responsible for what. Some team members weren't sure about their tasks, and others had different ideas about how to approach the project. Clara could see that this lack of clarity would lead to delays, so she took action. Instead of letting the project continue with confusion, Clara made a list of clear goals and deadlines. She also assigned specific roles to each team member, making sure that everyone understood their individual responsibilities. She encouraged the team to speak up if they had any questions or needed help, and she emphasized the importance of regular check-ins to keep everyone on track. By improving communication and setting clear expectations, Clara was able to get the team aligned and focused. As a result, the product launch was a success, and the campaign generated a lot of attention. Clara's story teaches us that clear, direct communication can help keep a team organized and focused on the goals ahead. Now, let's move on to another story about communication in a different setting. This time, we'll look at the experience of Robert, a teacher in Dallas, Texas. Robert is passionate about teaching English to high school students, but he often finds that some of his students struggle to understand complex English texts. One day, during a lesson on American history, Robert realized that a group of students wasn't fully engaged. They were distracted and not paying attention to the lesson, so he knew he needed to adjust his approach. Rather than continuing with his usual method of teaching, Robert decided to change the way he explained the material. He used simpler language, told stories about the historical events, and connected them to real-life situations that the students could relate to. For example, instead of just explaining the political battles between historical figures, Robert told the students about how people back in the 1800s struggled to make decisions that would affect their daily lives, just like people do today. 2. Make sure the students were following along. Robert encouraged them to ask questions and share their thoughts about the material. He used a variety of visual aids, such as pictures and maps, to make the lesson more engaging and easier to understand. By breaking down the complex ideas into smaller, more relatable pieces, Robert was able to keep his students engaged and interested in the lesson. Robert's story shows how adapting communication to suit the audience can make a big difference. By using language that the students could easily understand and by making the lesson more interactive, Robert was able to connect with his students and help them learn more effectively. This story demonstrates how flexible communication skills can improve learning outcomes and make teaching more successful. Now let's take a look at a story involving David, a real estate agent in Miami, Florida. David's job is to help people find their dream homes, and he has built a reputation for being knowledgeable and reliable. However, one day he was faced with a particularly challenging situation. He was working with a couple, Jack and Emma, who were looking for a house in a very competitive market. They had a clear idea of what they wanted, but there was one problem. The market was flooded with buyers, and the houses that Jack and Emma were interested in were being sold quickly. David knew that clear communication would be key in helping them find the right home. He set up a meeting with Jack and Emma to discuss their priorities and goals in more detail. During the meeting, David listened carefully to their concerns and explained how the home buying process worked in the current market. He also told them about some strategies for making competitive offers including what they could do to stand out from other buyers. David also made sure to stay in constant contact with Jack and Emma, sending them updates on new listings as soon as they came on the market. He explained the pros and cons of each property and made sure they understood the potential costs involved. Thanks to David's transparent and consistent communication, Jack and Emma felt confident in their decision-making and eventually found a home that they loved. David's approach to communication highlights the importance of being proactive and clear with clients, especially in situations where there is competition. By explaining the market clearly and helping his clients understand their options, David was able to guide them to a successful outcome. Finally, let's discuss a story about Katie, a financial advisor in Denver, Colorado. Katie works with clients to help them plan for retirement and manage their investments. One day, she met with a new client named Helen, who was nearing retirement age. Helen had some savings, but she wasn't sure how to manage them effectively to ensure that she would have enough money to live comfortably in retirement. During their meeting, Katie took the time to ask Helen about her financial goals and concerns. Helen explained that she was worried about outliving her savings and not being able to cover her living expenses in retirement. Katie listened carefully and reassured Helen that she could help her create a plan to manage her money wisely. Katie explained the different investment options available and how they could be tailored to Helen's risk tolerance and long-term goals. She also used simple language to make sure that Helen understood the various financial terms and concepts. Throughout the meeting, Katie encouraged Helen to ask questions and made sure that she felt comfortable with the plan they were putting together. By the end of their session, Helen felt more confident about her financial future and was grateful for Katie's clear, patient communication. Katie's story illustrates how effective communication in the financial world can help clients make informed decisions and feel more secure about their future. These stories all emphasize the importance of communication in various fields, whether it's in education, business, healthcare, or customer service. By listening actively, speaking clearly, and adapting your communication style to fit the situation, you can create stronger relationships, solve problems more effectively, and achieve better results in every area of life. Keep practicing your communication skills, and you'll find that both your listening and speaking abilities will improve over time. Let's keep exploring how important communication is in our daily lives and in different professions. There are so many situations where effective communication can make all the difference. I've got a few more stories that will give you a better understanding of how communication skills can be a game changer, whether you're at work, at school, or even managing personal relationships. Let's start with a story about John, an engineer working in Chicago. John works for a large construction company that builds bridges and highways. The team is made up of people from different backgrounds and fields of expertise, from architects to laborers to designers. One day, John was in charge of leading a team meeting for a major project they were starting on a new bridge construction. Everything seemed to be going well until one of the team members, Sarah, spoke up and mentioned an issue with the structural designs that could affect the safety of the bridge. At first, the team seemed unsure how to respond. It was a difficult situation because nobody wanted to point fingers or delay the project. John knew that clear communication was crucial in this moment. He didn't want to ignore the problem, and he didn't want to brush it off either. Instead of being defensive, John thanked Sarah for raising the issue and asked for more details so everyone could understand the problem. He encouraged everyone in the meeting to openly discuss their concerns. By doing this, the team could work together to find a solution that would prevent the issue from affecting the project. John's ability to communicate openly and respectfully made a huge difference. The team came up with a plan to fix the design and ensure that the bridge would be built safely. John's story shows that clear and honest communication is not only about giving orders or sharing information, it's also about listening to others, being open to feedback, and working together to find solutions. Next, let's talk about a teacher named Emma, who works at a middle school in Los Angeles. Emma teaches English and literature to 8th grade students, and one of her students, Jacob, has been struggling with reading comprehension. Jacob is a bright student, but he has a hard time understanding the deeper meaning of the stories they read in class. Emma noticed that he often fell behind during group discussions and appeared frustrated when reading longer texts. One day, Emma decided to try a new method of teaching. Instead of just assigning a reading passage and asking the class to analyze it, she made the lesson more interactive. She started by breaking down the story into smaller sections and having the students discuss each part in detail. Emma encouraged Jacob to ask questions whenever he didn't understand something. She also made sure to explain any difficult words or phrases, giving examples that were relevant to Jacob's life. Emma created a comfortable environment where Jacob felt safe to ask questions without fear of judgment. As the lesson progressed, Jacob started to open up more. He began to ask insightful questions, and he seemed to grasp the story better than before. Emma could see that by taking the time to communicate with her students in a more interactive and supportive way, she was helping them connect with the material in a meaningful way. This not only helped Jacob, but also other students who had similar challenges. Emma's story demonstrates how communication is key in education. It's not just about talking to students. It's about understanding their needs and adjusting your approach to help them succeed. By communicating in a way that makes learning feel more accessible, teachers can make a lasting impact on their students. Let's switch gears and talk about Sarah, a marketing consultant in Miami. Sarah works with small businesses to help them grow their brand and reach more customers. One day, Sarah was hired by a new coffee shop called Beans Delight to help them create a marketing strategy that would bring in more customers. The coffee shop had great coffee, a cozy atmosphere, and friendly staff, but they weren't getting as many customers as they hoped. Sarah's first step was to meet with the owner, Carlos, to understand the challenges he was facing. Carlos told Sarah that they had tried advertising online, but they hadn't seen much success. Sarah asked Carlos about his target customers, the kind of people who typically visit the shop. Carlos mentioned that the coffee shop was located in a busy neighborhood, but they weren't attracting as many young professionals or Sarah immediately saw that the coffee shop's online marketing was not aligned with its target audience. She worked with Carlos to create a new strategy, one that focused on reaching young professionals who like to relax in coffee shops or work remotely. Sarah suggested they use social media platforms like Instagram to showcase their cozy atmosphere and high-quality coffee. She also advised them to collaborate with local influencers who had a strong following among the younger crowd. Sarah's approach to communication with Carlos helped him see the bigger picture. By clearly understanding the target audience and using the right marketing channels, Sarah was able to help Beans Delight attract more customers. In just a few months, the shop saw a significant increase in foot traffic. Sarah's success story shows how important it is to communicate clearly with clients to understand their needs and goals. It also shows how the right communication strategy can have a huge impact on a business's success. Now, let's talk about a healthcare story involving Dr. David, a family physician in Houston. Dr. David works at a community health center and sees many patients every day. One day, a patient named Lisa came to see him for a routine checkup. Lisa had been feeling a bit tired lately and was worried that she might be dealing with something serious. Dr. David noticed that Lisa seemed anxious, so he took the time to listen to her concerns carefully. Rather than jumping straight into medical tests, Dr. David began by asking Lisa about her lifestyle and daily routine. He asked her about her diet, sleep habits, and exercise routine. As they talked, Dr. David realized that Lisa's stress levels had been high because of her busy job and a lack of sleep. He explained to her that stress and poor sleep could lead to feelings of fatigue and anxiety. Dr. David took the time to explain how these factors could affect her overall health. After their conversation, Dr. David suggested some lifestyle changes that could help Lisa feel better, such as improving her sleep habits, managing stress through relaxation techniques, and eating a balanced diet. Lisa felt relieved after talking to Dr. David, as she realized that her symptoms were more related to lifestyle than a serious illness. Dr. David's ability to communicate with empathy and patience helped Lisa understand her health better and gave her the tools to improve it. This story shows that effective communication is not just about sharing medical information. It's about listening to patients, understanding their concerns, and explaining things in a way they can understand. Now, let's take a look at a story involving Alex, a software developer in Seattle. Alex works for a tech company that creates applications for businesses. One day, Alex and his team were working on a new project for a client who wanted a mobile app to help manage their customer orders. The project was behind schedule and the client was getting frustrated. The development team needed to figure out how to catch up quickly and deliver the app on time. Alex knew that communication within the team was crucial if they were going to meet the deadline. He called a meeting with the team to discuss the project's current status. Instead of just giving orders, Alex asked the team members to share their thoughts on the challenges they were facing. He listened carefully to their concerns and worked with them to prioritize tasks and come up with a plan to finish the project on time. Alex also communicated regularly with the client to keep them updated on the progress. He made sure to explain any delays and provided solutions for how they would catch up. By keeping everyone informed and communicating clearly with both his team and the client, Alex was able to help the project get back on track. The app was completed on time, and the client was satisfied with the final product. Alex's story shows the importance of clear communication in a project setting. By keeping the lines of communication open and addressing issues as they arise, teams can stay focused and deliver results. Through these stories, we can see how communication is key to solving problems, achieving success, and improving relationships. Whether you're in education, healthcare, business, or any other field, the ability to communicate effectively can make a world of difference. Keep practicing your listening and speaking skills, and you'll notice how much better you become at understanding